If you're an American, I don't, I mean, a normal American, unless you live in a very densely populated urban center, like New York or Boston or, you know, the further west you go, the less this dynamic is in play. But anyway, here's the deal. My observation is, if you're a normal American, you don't walk very much. I mean, you drive most everywhere, right? If you get in the car, and if I'm 5 blocks away from the grocery store, I'll get in the car and drive to the grocery store and then drive home after I get what I want. That's kind of normal life. It's not that way in Europe. My experience traveling in Europe is that a lot, maybe even the majority of people walk. They walk to the transit stop, and then from there they walk where. When when Debbie and I leave the country and go to Europe and do our ministry with open door libraries, we will walk. This sounds bizarre, but we will walk an average of about 15,000 steps a day. Now, when I'm home, my average is under 5,000 steps a day. We don't walk very much. My world, the world, I mean, I don't live in a big thrall urban center. I live in a town that's almost a suburb of a big town. Edmond is kind of at this point a suburb of Oklahoma City, but the city is so spread out. You there's not much. I mean, it's like if I'm going to walk to the store, it's going to take me a half hour at a fairly consistent and fairly brisk pace. Ain't nobody got time for that, right? So what's the deal with all this walk talk? Well, it's because we live in a culture where the idea of walking in truth kind of loses it loses its depth because we don't walk. Now, the idea of driving in truth, we drive everywhere. Okay, Well, John writes about walking in the truth. And this is 2 John, verse 6. We talked about this last time. This is love, that we walk in obedience to God's commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. Walk in love. Walk in his commandments. That's interesting. The whole concept to me is this: to walk has to do with in John's day, this was normal life. Nearly all of normal life was in walking. A large percentage of a person's day was taken up with walking. I run to Walmart and I can get there and shop and get back in, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes on a good day, right? Well, to travel that same distance, honestly, back in the day, would have taken the whole day. So walk in his commands. We live within the parameters of God's design. I've told you this before. I like talking about it, so I'm going to say it again. My my mission statement for my counseling ministry is helping you find your best life. And then under that is, you find your best life by discovering God's design and arranging your life around it. Now, when you or I, anybody, discovers God's design, we do that primarily by looking into His Word. He doesn't leave us clueless. Yes, there are inferences and there are hints all over, but God is not just the God of hints. God is a God of word, of communication. And He has made His design known for us. And on one level, His design is simple enough that it can be encapsulated in just a few words. And John goes on, as you have heard from the beginning, His command is that you walk in love. That's the mission statement of the Christian, is to walk in love. Now, when you unpack what that means, okay, now you're getting into, there is absolute depth in what does it mean to walk in love. We sometimes we misunderstand what love is about, and have I talked about that a bunch, but sometimes we misidentify love, or we only take the tiniest, smallest little piece of what love is and does, and we focus in on that, and love is huge. When you think, what would love do in whatever the situation comes up that you're dealing with? What would love do here? That's a big, big question. Sometimes love gives in. Sometimes love stretches itself out on the cross and lets itself be crucified, killed. Other times, love kicks over a table in the temple and scatters the coinage and drives the livestock and the dealers out of the temple. Sometimes love looks into the eyes of a woman caught in adultery and says, I don't condemn you. Now go and stop sinning. And sometimes it looks into the eyes of religious elites and calls them vipers, whitewashed sepulchres, which is, a sepulcher was the resting place for the bones of dead people. There are very few things as for the Jew as unclean as the bones of a dead person. This was not just saying, you guys are like unmarked graves. No, it was worse than that. But when I ask the question, what would love do? There are times when I can't just put my finger right on a chapter and verse where in Jesus' biography where He did something or didn't do something, and that will give me all the answers I need. This whole idea of what would love do, if we can't begin to answer that question, we'll never be able to walk in love. I'm going to suggest that one of the smartest things any of us could do in terms of walking in love is let's kind of do some discovery work on, can we get a little better handle on what is love? In my opinion, one of the best places to make that kind of discovery is in the letter of the Apostle Paul to the Corinthian church, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. This has been dubbed the love chapter, and if you've been to a Christian wedding lately, it's been read, it's been sung about. Let's take a look. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. What Paul is saying here is, you can do any number of noble, sacrificial, high-minded, high-moraled things. But if you do them without love, they're meaningless. I love his thing about being like a clanging cymbal. In our pep band, when I was in high school, I got to play the cymbals. Fun deal, because you didn't have to read music. You just kind of clicked along. But the poor person, I think it was a sax player that was in front of me. Now, that was the worst place in the whole gymnasium to have to sit. Because you know what you heard was just a clang, 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 clang. That's not music. That's just noise. And oh my, how irritating. That's the picture that Paul draws of doing these noble, worthy things without love. They're not only meaningless, they're irritating. And then he goes on and he says, this is verse 4, love is patient. Love is kind. Those two things stand in pretty strong contrast to the world I live in and the world you live in. Patient. You heard this phrase, I'm a patient person, but, well, what does that mean? I'm out of patience. And usually it didn't take a long, long time for that person to run out of patience. Love is kind. Kindness marks acts of love. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. Always perseveres. Yea, love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I have a challenge for you today. Get your own scriptures out, either in your phone, tablet, computer, print and paper, Bible. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Then take a sheet of paper or your notebook or whatever, because you're going to be doing some thinking and writing. And I would like for you to have two categories in your writing. One is things love does not do. The other side is does not do and is not. Okay? And on the other side, things love is and does. Just go through and create this list. Now, that alone will stretch your mind. And here's the value of doing that. It's not just an intellectual exercise, though it is, but it's not just that. Once you've got this list in, then you need to go through that list and look at your own life in reference to those characteristics. Don't be judgmental. Be observational. And then after you've done your observation, then look at what 2 or 3 things would do you the most good to focus effort, attention, time, resources to growing in. And then partner with God. Ask Him. Ask the Holy Spirit to produce His fruit in you, which begins with love. And in these 2 or 3 ways, and then make it your objective that this week, beginning today, you will address these things in partnership with Christ. Well, blew past the time again. I got to get better at that. I hope maybe I will next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.